Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in. It's the King of Chicago on Amigos, Everything Amiga. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Amigos. I'm John.
And I'm Aaron.
And today, Aaron, we're talking about the King of Chicago.
Oh, man. That wasn't me when I was up there. I can tell you that.
we recently went to Chicago.
Yeah.
We saw we went to the Cocoa Fest over there. And what was the most surprising thing to you from our trip to Chicago? Just it can be something about Cocoa Fest or something about the Galloping Ghost. What was the thing that surprised you the most about our trip?
I was real surprised that it snowed. I was pretty surprised by that. I was pretty surprised that the part of Chicago we were in, it was like a perpetual, never-ending sprawl, and that sort of reminded me of the outer parts of Houston, probably most big cities. You know, the road system down there. It wasn't the most dangerous I've ever seen, but it was not I would not say probably the easiest to navigate. There was a lot of you need to know where you're going. That's for sure. You know, but I mean, listen, the part of Chicago we went to was totally fine. I wasn't in fear of my life. I was not ducking. But I mean, we didn't go anywhere near downtown. So there you go. To be king of Chicago, you got to go right downtown.
If you could be the king of any city, what would it be?
Oh, I get to pick the city?
You get to pick the city.
I got to think about that for a second, because, I mean, there are a lot of good cities. I don't think it would be an American city.
Yeah,
I want something
worldwide.
more exotic. You know, like, how about the king of, like, and I could actually probably do this. I could be like the king of, like, Honolulu. That'd be kind of nice out there, and it'd be sunny. I mean, granted, they've got hosed here recently, you know, down in Hawaii. But that would be dandy. Somewhere nice and warm, you know, with the beautiful sunny beaches and stuff. That'd be kind of nice. So I can handle that. I don't have to be, I'm not so arrogant where I have to be the king of the biggest city. But what about you?
I'd be the king of Paris.
Paris.
Okay, and I'll tell you why. What I'd do is I'd build my castle. It wouldn't really be a castle. It'd just be a nice room.
Yeah.
I'd have two. I'd have one, you know, the Louvre, right?
I've heard of that. Yeah, the Louvre,
okay.
the big art museum. Yeah.
Yeah, they've got a glass pyramid that is like the entrance, but it's one of those things.
I've seen that. Yeah.
It starts below ground and it builds up through the earth.
Oh, it comes up from underground.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. I'd put one of my rooms on the top of that pyramid.
Yeah.
I'd put the other room on the top of the Eiffel Tower.
Yeah.
And then you know what I do?
I don't.
Zip line.
Bam. You know, now you want me to be king of Las Vegas, because you could do something very similar there. And think about it. You could sleep in a new, like, monument every night. You could be the pyramids one night, Statue of Liberty, the Eiffel Tower.
Really, when you go to Las Vegas, you travel the world without leaving your casino.
The good thing about Vegas is, like, you could travel the world, and everywhere you go in the world, people are peeing on the street. They're laying down on the sidewalk. Everything costs a fortune. Everyone is seedy. Everyone's half drunk and mostly naked, despite their body type. So yeah, let's thank God that that's not a microcosm of the actual world. We'd be in deep trouble then. That's for sure. Everybody's broke and pissed off.
Speaking of broke and pissed off, let's talk about the king of Chicago.
We can talk about the king of Hurricane. That's me right there. The wacky, jazzy tones of King of Chicago, Boat. This game's got a real, an unusual soundtrack for an unusual game. That's for sure, Boat. On this one, had you played this one before this week?
No, this is one. I'm going to tell you. You know, this is one game that we've heard about since we started doing the show. Pretty much, people have talked about their love of the King of Chicago.
Yeah.
But since we never had to play it, and since neither of us, I believe, had a lot of experience with the game, we just never really dialed it in. So this is my first time.
Yeah, you know, I had less than a cup of coffee with this. I mean, I had clicked on it a couple of times, been like, and then just never played even like 10 minutes of it until this week. And I'm surprised this one ever got the votes to get, because we sort of inserted this one. This is a
It
this
it
is
did
an
not get the votes to be
this is
selected.
an author ad. Yeah, we put
Yeah.
this one in, and we'll explain why in a little while. But so this is the King of Chicago, published on the Amiga in '87 by Cinemaware. This one's credited to the developer Master Designer Software. Those guys, and we'll get into what that is here in a minute, but Master Designer Software did a lot of stuff. Defender of the Crown 1 and 2, SDI, Sinbad, and the Throne of the Falcon. That was all stuff that they worked on. And this was produced by your typical Cinemaware crew. You had Robert Joseph, Phillips Jacob, or excuse me, Robert Jacob and Phillips Jacob, John Cutter, of course. I mean, what did those guys not do? Wings, Three Stooges, Rocket Ranger, Sinbad. They did pretty much all the main Cinemaware titles. The big star of this show is Doug Sharp. And the reason I say that is the Amiga wasn't the first machine to get King of Chicago. It was the second after Doug had released this thing on the Mac. The Mac Classic, I believe it was, wasn't it, Bo? If I'm not mistaken.
Well, there was only one Mac. It was.
There you go. I guess now they
yeah.
call it the Classic. See, I'm not as well versed in the Mac lore. We're gonna get into Doug here in a little bit. He hasn't done a ton of titles. He did a game called Free DC, and he did Chipwits, and he also pretty much did most of the porting to this to other systems, including to DOS, to the 68,000. Who'd have thunk it, right? The Atari ST, the Amiga. He did the ports. He did the ports of those pretty much. He coded them for the most part. Of course, this one got spiced up by the Cinemaware gang. One thing I wanted to mention, we talked about the music in this boat, which is unusual.
Yeah.
The music in this was done by Bill Williams. We've actually crossed paths with this guy many times, but as a programmer, he's the same guy that did Alley Cat, Mindwalker, Neuromancer. He did Pioneer Plague, which me and Britt covered on our Ham episode. He did Knights of the Crystallion, like Monopoly on the NES, and he did Bart's Nightmare on the Super Nintendo.
Man,
he did a lot of programming.
That's amazing. And this is a shoot. Monopoly on the NES is some of my most favorite music of any.
Really? No,
game.
He did the game. He did the game. Not
he
just
did the game.
music.
The game is
See,
also
all those things I mentioned. He did the game. He didn't just do the music on them. Yeah, so he was sort of a big player. This game is credited as a screenplay by Doug Sharp and Paul Walsh. We'll get into that in a minute. That's kind of an interesting backstory on that. Before we get too deep into the background of the programmers of this, let's sort of discuss the game a little bit here, Boat. So, the game takes place in Chicago directly after the arrest of Al Capone, which actually happened in real life. And you are the sort of a big player on the north end of Chicago in an Irish gang, and you are put in a position to kind of guide this man's career, make decisions for him as he works his way into getting a bigger piece of the action in Chicago, and by taking over territory and whatnot. The game comes up with a screen where they machine gun the logo. There's a wacky little ditty, and then you're sort of thrust right into the storyline. What were your thoughts on this, Bo? As this thing opens up, because I mean, it shows you its hand right out of the gate, doesn't it?
Well, the first thing I did, and I don't often do this, but since it was a Cinemaware game, I wanted to see what sort of supporting material the game came with, and so I opened up the manual that this thing came with, and it opens up with this sentence. Let's go back in time to 12:01 a.m. on January 17th, 1920. A nation victorious in war and steeped in idealism embarked on what must be one of history's dumbest efforts to ever outlaw sin. So I thought that was nice. They come out swinging at the American government, calling it the prohibition one of the dumbest efforts ever to outlaw sin, and it was pretty dumb. I'm not saying it's not.
How was the manual? I didn't even look at the manual, Bo. How is it?
Well, the manual is a lot like Cinemaware's games. It's big on information and low on useful information. So
Yeah.
you get a lot of character profiles.
Yeah.
You get, Pinky and Lola, Bull, Tony, Peepers, all the guys that you can read all about their backstory and everything like that. They have a very extensive history of gangsters on the screen. So not necessarily gangsters in real life, but gangsters that have appeared on various movies and things. It's amazing how gangster movies sort of ran parallel with the real gangsters in real life. And so it was one of those things where people that were not in Chicago and New York would go and see these movies and think that that was what it was like, and who knows, maybe it was. But when it comes to actually playing the game and like useful hints on how to play, very low on that front. It's basically one of these things where it's like, just try different things and see what happens.
It's interesting. It's got. I'm actually going to have to look at it because I would like to know a little bit of the backstory in some of these guys, especially like Ben. I was never sure if he was the mob's lawyer or he was just just another mobster. Exactly
Well,
what his.
Ben is crafty and devious. He's
Oh, I
more
know.
intelligent than ambitious. He's been with the North Side for years, and he can be a good advisor if he's treated well. Treat him badly, and he can arrange to have your throat cut.
Oh,
Doesn't really
man.
like violence and is a coward in action. Looks tough, though, and won't hesitate to make threats.
There you go. Well, that doesn't answer my question, but still, at
Nope,
least they
like
put
I
something
said,
in there.
that's a perfect indicative of how this manual is. When I fired this up for the first time, I was just kind of looking at it, and I was studying the screen, and I realized that things were happening. And that's when I discovered that this game will play itself if left unattended.
Yeah, absolutely, it will. And sometimes it doesn't give you a ton of time to make a decision either.
Right.
You have to get in
Right.
there. So, what is this game? Well, we explained the backstory. This game, I'm going to simplify what it is substantially, but what you've got here is a game of branching conversations that you control what your guy says. So, like, and depending on what you do or say, the response or the outcome of different scenes will change. It's sort of like a real jazzed up choose your adventure, but there's a lot more
Yeah.
going on under the hood, Boat.
The
I mean,
technical term is visual novel.
visual. Now this is something that was a new concept in '87, but I mean, aren't there games like? Isn't this what the Telltale games that I hear about are? I've never
Well,
played any of this stuff yet.
this was not really a new concept if you are a Macintosh gamer. And it's important to realize that this game first came out on the Mac. Because the Mac wasn't blessed with full color graphics, and because the only thing that Steve Jobs hated worse than video games was comic books. It wasn't a platform that was awash with lots of games. But what you did have was this program called HyperCard. And HyperCard allowed people to make these choose your own adventure style games, where you would basically click on different responses, and it would take you to different places. So this game is definitely not a HyperCard game. I mean, this game is so far beyond what that is. But the sort of evolution of this type of game was well established on the Macintosh, if not on the Amiga.
You know, we might as well, since you mentioned the Mac, I'm glad you brought it up. Again, of course, this did come out on the Mac first, and on the Mac, Doug Sharp did everything. He did everything. He did the script, the program, everything on there was him. And so, when you look at the Mac version is a little, from what I've heard, it's a little more unyielding. It's a little slower than the PC version. But one of the wackier things is that all the characters on the Mac version are they're clay-mated guys. Like, and what would happen was, from what I read, is that when the author would get tired of programming, he'd just get burnt out. He would go out in his garage, and he would mold different heads for his gangsters. That's what he did to like relieve stress. So, and when you see the Mac version of this with the weird-looking guys, those aren't just weird looking artistic choices. That's someone's clay head that he digitized.
That's so interesting.
And so I'm looking forward to getting into that. But that's what he did. So yeah, this was actually, Boat, in terms of production, this was the first Cinemaware game ever undertaken. back when this one came out. It wasn't the first one to get released, but it was the first one that was gotten into.
Hmm.
So I mentioned that a guy named Paul Wash was given a credit on this as for screenplay. He actually get this, he was brought in basically as a dialogue guy. He
Mm.
went through to check all the dialogue, and from an interview I read with Doug, these two guys both just immersed themselves in gangster lore,
Okay.
gangster movies and stuff. And so they ended up basically writing tons and tons of these little scenes. When you play this game, as you go through the game, the game is split up every so often, and it's hard to call these different chapters because sometimes they'll be real short, but they'll be like basically a title card that'll pop up, and it might say, that an old boss is no good to the gang,
Yeah, well,
and then
what these are like is these harken back to the days of silent movies,
yeah,
where
exactly,
you have a scene card essentially,
scene card.
and every time that you'd switch a scene, you'd move to a different location, you'd see a little paragraph that would inform you what you're about to see.
Right, exactly. Now, these are distributed in a strange way. This is a strange game, all right, and
Yeah.
and the way it flows. Um, when you start the game, when you start the game, it starts the same way every time. You are there, and Al Capone's just been locked up. From there, you can branch out in different ways. And remember, a long time ago, we did "It Came from the Desert." Remember that boat?
I do,
And we play.
unfortunately.
And this game has a lot of. "It Came from the Desert" has a lot of jack. People love that game, right? I like it too. But it was it jumped too far ahead, I think. And so we would get scenes in that didn't make any sense all the time. Like stuff would happen that didn't make a lick of sense, or you'd see stuff repetitively over and over.
Yeah.
That game tried to do what this game pulls off, which is
Tell a
it
cohesive story while giving you the insight to make choices.
right.
The game, when you make choices and you move from scene to scene, the narrative flows in a way that's not jarring, and that's the big difference between this and It Came from the Desert.
Right. Yeah, exactly. In the true Cinemaware tradition, this game is occasionally broken up with little action scenes, very little. But I think I saw 3 or 4 different action scenes where you do something. There's one where you throw a bomb. There's an assassination attempt. There's some where you shoot guns. There's also one where you shoot up a building, which is interesting. I had an interesting thing happen with that one. And so they have a little, just like little scenes. I will say they weren't hard and they weren't off. They didn't happen often, So, but they absolutely had a huge impact on the narrative, depending on what happened in the
Right,
scene.
right.
Uh,
Because the unlike a lot of other games, well, I'm just going to come out and say it. This is an easier game to write than a lot of other games because all you have to do is look at real life. Like we haven't yet had a giant insect invasion in America,
yeah.
but we have had lots of gangland activity in the inner cities. And so like all you have to do is watch any film or or read any true crime story and see how these things go. Like if you're trying to extort somebody for money and they don't want to pay, then you got to go in there and you got to firebomb their shop, or
Right.
maybe you got to take somebody out,
You know,
Sometimes Santa got to get whacked is
do you
what
not,
I'm saying.
Doug? I wanted to because Doug had a quote, and this quote probably could do a better job than we can at describing what you're doing here. The quote is, he writes, a guy in a he's trying to explain the concept of this game. And
Mhm.
he says, a guy in a projection booth with hours and hours of film about a group of gangsters. The film isn't on reels, but it's on short clips of a few seconds to a few minutes long. The clips hang all over the walls of the projection room. The projectionist knows exactly what's on each clip and can grab a new one and thread it into the projector instantly. The audience is out there in the theater shouting out suggestions, and the projectionist is listening and taking the suggestions into account, but also factoring in what clips he's already shown because he wants to put together a real story. That's his explanation for the game.
I think that's great.
Probably,
That's
that's about as
fantastic.
good as you can do. Now, let's talk about playing the game. As we mentioned, you'll pick these different. You'll basically pick the dialogue bubble that you want when it comes when you give it a chance, and you get some pretty vastly different stories. There is some sameness early, but once you get past, say, the first part of the game, I had some pretty wildly different experiences, including one, my favorite scene, and my favorite runs of the whole game. It took me probably 45 minutes, Boat, as I was going through this thing.
It's real hard to die in this game quickly. Unless you, the easiest way to die is to just start shooting everybody you come into contact with. You'll die pretty quick then.
You can die in the first 3 minutes. Yeah,
you can go for a while.
Yeah, and the first couple places I tried to be peaceful. One thing about the guy you play, Pinky, there is no, like, he's a piece of garbage.
Yeah,
like
he's a
not
gangster.
nice. Yeah, he's mean to his girlfriend. He's mean to his geeks. And so. But what got me was I was on my way. I'd captured 3 of the 4 parts of the city. I was almost there. But there was a scene where I had to run through and shoot people in these windows, right, with the mouse. And so it's the old bit where a silhouette pops up, and maybe it's a guy, but sometimes it's a chick. Anyway, I shot a chick accidentally in this thing, and I didn't think much of it at the time. The cops came and arrested me, and I got the chair.
Yeah.
I didn't even let you pick the dialogue you're going to say before you get electrocuted.
Thing comes over your head. It's your classic chair scene.
It was really, I was surprised, but it made sense. There are plenty of times, depending on how you decide to take over the gang, who's on your side. When you're not, another thing, there's a ledger in this game after you become the head boss of the North Side gang. And the ledger is all the payouts you're giving. How much money do you give your lieutenants? How much money do you give your gang? How many people are in your gang? Should you get more? Should you extort more money from these 3 big mainline incomes? How much do you pay yourself? And depending on how you're doing on that ledger, the game changes. Because early on, the game sort of makes fun of you being broke. Like, how are you going to do anything? You don't got no money, and so your guy will bring that into his dialogue. Man, I'm broke. Or maybe you're not paying your girlfriend enough money. She wants a new hat. She wants a new pair of shoes. She always wants something. And your guy's sort of a crude jerk to her, too. Sometimes you pay her off, sometimes you don't. I found it pretty fascinating, though, the amount of different trees and paths you could go down when I was playing this. I actually really enjoyed this a lot more than I thought I would, Bode.
Yeah, this is a game that I wish there were more types of this game out there. Now I know in the new world there are. The Nintendo DS, there are several games. Yeah, this genre has always been vastly more popular in Japan than in the United States. The visual novel genre is huge over there, but they've brought several games over here. There's a game called, I think, Room 314. That I played that was very good. But there's something to be said for just feeling like, okay, I want to essentially watch this movie, but I want to have some agency in what happens.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's the same thing it's the same reason why Choose Your Own Adventure books are so popular. You just want to see what happens. You want to feel like you have control, and you want to see how far you can take it. Where this game falls apart for me isn't so much the action sequences, although I do find those difficult to control, but it is the ledger part of it, because you have very granular control over your ledger, and it's never explained exactly how much you need to adjust the numbers to make the expected outcome happen. And if that's the case, that's okay. You don't have to spell it out, but you should just be like, give your guys, like, more or less or the same. Don't let me adjust the totals by $5, because you don't know, like, maybe they do want more money, but how much more do they want? And that sort of thing can only be discovered by trial and error. And there are so many other variables going on in this game that you're never really sure what you're doing and how you're doing it. So if I could change anything about this game, it would be to simplify that ledger and just turn it into another Choose Your Own Adventure type thing, where it's like, well, your boys are complaining. Do you want to give them more money, give them less money, or stay the same? That sort of a thing.
Well, one thing I noticed, I like the ledger a lot, and the reason I like it is it absolutely affects gameplay. And I'll give you an example.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like,
I'm not saying it doesn't.
At one point, I offered Ben 40 G's to like go in with me, right? And then I started I started screwing him, right?
Mhm.
Like, you'll lose your guys that way. They get mad. And they'll like, one time I didn't pay him enough, and so when I made a move, he didn't back me. Like, he shot me. Also,
Mhm.
one time I didn't pay my geeks enough money, they got mad. You know, what I like to do is, like, at the beginning, you're in the hole, so I usually deduct about a third of my personal income to put in the kitty.
But see, if
So
you do that, then your boys think you're soft.
well, there's also, if you don't gamble, like, there's a bit, one of the stories I went in, I didn't gamble, and I would have lost, but they still thought I was a geek. Like, they
Mhm.
mentioned it
Right,
later. It's
right.
I don't know how you write a game like this. I mean, I have no idea. I mean, and it would be, it's quite a trick, and it's sort of it's sleight of hand on a high level.
Yes.
The way this
Yeah.
game works, and the fact that you don't repeat scenes in, like, this is a perfect game to play once a week.
Mhm.
You know, you play it one time. Like, if you sit down and play, like, I played it like 5, 6 times in a row, okay? You're going to go through the same bit at the beginning that you always do.
Mhm.
But if you played this once a week for like a year or maybe half a year, you'd get a lot of play out of
Yeah,
it.
and I mean, this is a game, unlike a lot of Cinemaware games, in my opinion. If you do that, if you play this game once a week, you're gonna see a different story every time, and I really believe that you're gonna get your money's worth out of this full price game.
This is a Cinemaware game. Like, this is the game. I mean, if you think about what the credo of Cinemaware was, to make games that were like movies, like,
Like Vince, yeah.
this is it. You know, I should mention that Doug mentioned that it would take about 8 hours to see all the stuff in the game. And he says it's most of the time when you play a single adventure, you're seeing about 20% of the game. That makes about that. Now, if you suck or you do something crazy, like you said, you go crazy with the gun, you'll probably see a lot
Every time
less.
you say Doug, I just think you're talking about Doug.
No,
Our
I'm talking about Doug Sharp. I'm on a first name basis with Doug, so I can call him by his first name.
I call him Mr.
So,
Sharp.
So I guess we'll go ahead and spill the beans. We sort of mentioned this last week. This Friday, a week from today as we record this, I'm going to be interviewing Doug Sharp one-on-one, live streaming next Friday. We're going to do it here on the channel. And so if you've got any questions you'd like to ask, please either what would be easy to do is just put them under this video at the on YouTube, or if you're listening at home, put them in the Discord. We're going to be talking to Doug. It's funny how we ended up hooking up with him, which we'll probably get into that. But he seems like a real nice guy, and there's so much to pick his brain on about this boat. I can't wait to get into his claymation aspects of it in particular.
There's one thing that I did want to touch on.
Yeah.
We haven't yet, and it's the interesting way that death is portrayed in this game.
Yeah,
because
go ahead.
You're whacking suckers left and right in this game, and this is, boy, if this is the way that gangsters die, sign me up, baby. Because what happens is when they get shot, they just calmly close their eyes, they turn their head to the left, and just sink down a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's it. I wonder if he was pressured by Cinemaware to keep the gore out of this game. But even if he wasn't allowed to show blood, I mean, showing just a bullet hole in the chest or something like that. I mean, this is a game about killing people in cold blood. You've got to have some sort of violence. That is one sort of negative I have about this game, is that the death sequences are just so out of character with the rest of the game.
Well, there's also the bit where did you ever get the concrete galoshes? There's that.
No, I never did.
And then the electric chair. I would not call this a not violent game.
Right.
I think the deaths were sort of a utilitarian death that they could use with what they had on the screen. I mean, the graphics are I would say pretty good. The head, the faces.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like someone had a really good face making program, and then like they just drew some bodies and stuff like that, which is probably what they did. And, like, you could tell like D-Paint was heavily involved in the making of this game. But I mean, for what it is, I mean, this is a game you could play with no graphics if you wanted to, or claymation graphics. But what's here is okay. It's serviceable. The deaths are funny. I mean, a lot of
They
ways.
are.
They're
They
not
are.
supposed to be like when you kill the first boss. He just slightly. I mean, his whole body just goes like, "Brrr," but his head's still there. His eyes are shut. And Ben comes in. It's like, what's happened? It's like, well, he slumped over right there. It's what happened, Ben. He's mauled. But I had to. I'm like you. I got a big hoe. They make that noise. Ugh.
Mhm.
It's good stuff. But hey, again, this was this was in production in like '86. So you're talking this is on the basic Amiga back
Oh,
in the
yeah.
day. So it's not it's I think for what they were doing and what they had to work with, they did a pretty good job. I didn't mention at the beginning of the talk here, but this is 2 discs, so it's not too bad. For 2 discs, I think they got like a lot of action out of this. Speaking of action, Boat, did we get any Discord action on this one?
We did. Our first review comes in from Alien Breeder. He says, when I was a youngster, this game looked amazing. He expected Cinemaware graphics and storytelling along with puzzle-based gameplay. At the time, this seemed very cool. Trying to play it now, it doesn't quite hold up, but for the time, it was pretty good. If you need some nightmare fuel, look at the Mac version.
Yes.
Overall, 789 top bananas.
Very good.
David Hearnwriter writes, Cinemaware proved they were the masters of interactive storytelling with this gangster-led choose-your-own-adventure. I relished walking in the bloodstained shoes of the despicable Pinky Callahan, rising thug of the North Side. Sometimes I'd shoot it out to get to the top. Other times I'd angle to get more territory, and occasionally I'd aim for the impossible by trying to keep Lola happy. The Ace story branches give it replay value. The graphics are still so perfect for the era. The music fits the bill nicely. Arcade sequences are hit and miss, but brilliant storytelling wins you over. I was captivated traveling back to the 30s, trying to become kingpin of the Windy City, and rate it 9 out of 10 illegal barrels of hooch. Ricky DeRocher writes, King of Chicago follows the typical Cinemaware format of mixing a light strategy main game with arcade minigames, although this has a lot more emphasis on character interaction. Overall, this game is another winner from Cinemaware. Pajako6502 writes, the next game from Cinemaware I played after Defender of the Crown. The bar was set pretty high, and King of Chicago did not disappoint. On revisiting the game, it's not a million miles away from games like Mass Effect and Dragon Age, where your choices dictate the story, and with a few minigames and asset management thrown in, it really gives a good mix of gameplay. It's not all just lobbing pineapples and shooting up the joint for fun. I've been to the chair a few times for my crimes. The ending isn't exactly the fanfare of Defender of the Crown, and my rash choices have led to many an early demise. So does crime really pay? The graphics are pretty awesome, but the thing that has always bugged me is the utter lack of any texture or shading in the character suits. It comes off as unfinished. The faces in this are beautifully rendered, and the rest of the game looks fantastic, so it's a complete mismatch. I knew it was all to save space, but it looks odd. Audio sets the tone well, although it's a little sparse, but it all comes together for something that is fun to play, and one I've played many times and probably will again. 9 out of 10. P.S. Ben's head is too big for his body. Okay, I'll shut up about the suit thing now.
He's a meathead, old Ben, that's for sure.
And finally, Self-Inflicted Learning writes, King of Chicago is a story-driven, choose-your-own-adventure movie centered around a classic anti-hero named Pinky. Based on 1920s characters and plot lines from the Untouched... Sorry, I just fell asleep thinking about this game.
Oh,
The graphics
burial.
That's right. The graphics and sound are overall very good considering the era. The minigames are typical Cinemaware with nebulous controls designed only to frustrate you, so boo on those. My biggest problem with King of Chicago was not the execution, but the development team. Let me start that again. My biggest problem with King of Chicago was not the execution by the development team. My biggest issue is with the story and the main character. Pinky simply wasn't likable. I didn't want to roleplay him and wasn't inspired to root for him. So I ended up playing this only to discover the different ways I could get him whacked or yelled at by his girlfriend. But after about 15 minutes, even that's lost its charm. Plus, you have to see Mama cry every time he takes a dirt nap. And unless you're a monster, that's just sad. 6 out of 10. Graphics and sound are top-notch Cinemaware. It's just not a fun game or captivating story. So Self-Inflicted Learning, not a fan.
I forgot about the mom. She comes around every so often. She's a generic a gangster mom. Oh, what did I go wrong? She's always
Yeah.
crying. You used to be such a good boy. It's such baloney.
But again, it's right out of the movies. Right
And
out of
someone
the
mentioned the sound, and the sound, and I wouldn't call these what I would call orchestral wonderment, but I mean it works for this game.
Oh, yeah.
You
They're just
have to
little
have
ditties.
something,
They're little
but
ditties that set the scene.
I mean it's like it's
Yeah.
like someone beat a synthesizer with a hammer, but I mean it does work
I
because
like it. I like
it
it.
strings things together in a weird jazzy way.
Mhm.
Lemon gave this a 7.94, so on the cusp of 8. This did pretty well in the mags. CBG gave this a 90%. Commodore user gave it an 80. I should mention there was a Commodore 64, believe it or not, Boat. There was a C64 version that's announced, but it was never put out. So I think you could pretty much do a game like this on any computer, if you think about it. I think pretty much any computer could handle some version of this game.
Absolutely. I mean,
So
you could even write a text adventure.
absolutely. The games machine gave this an 80, Ace 70, and it went down from there. But still, pretty good scores across the board on this one. A lot of fun. I did look this one up on the eBay, Boat. Get your checkbook out, brother, because it ain't cheap. There currently aren't any on the Amiga side up on eBay. But I've seen these things before. I looked a long time ago. I looked at this game. It was over $100. There's someone selling a sealed DOS version right now for $96. That's sealed, so that'd be kind of neat. And I saw a GS version, the Apple GS, going for $65. So you're not getting this one cheap. If you've got it, you've probably got yourself something good. So overall, Bo, big thumbs up on this one.
Big thumbs up. Probably my favorite Cinemaware game I've played yet.
Wow, the high praise.
If you ask any Amiga repair technician what the most problematic component of a motherboard is, they'll undoubtedly mention capacitors. The electrolytic capacitors that shipped with the Amiga are 30 years old or older at this point, and each one is a ticking time bomb waiting to explode battery acid all over your motherboard, sometimes damaging it irrevocably. Don't wait. Replace your capacitors now. Full capacitor kits for every Amiga model are available now at RetroRewind.ca. Don't want to attempt the repair yourself? Use their white glove recap service and leave the intricate removal and soldering process to the professionals using industry standard equipment. Use the promo code Amigos10 at checkout and save 10% off your cap kit or service. Remember, make RetroRewind.ca your first stop for all your Commodore computer needs.
Amiga News.
All right, Aaron, it's time for the old Pleiades.
Man, I was a big fan of the arcade game Pleiades. What are we looking at here, Bode?
This is a 3D game where you are, what you're supposed to do, according to the website, navigate through space, gather powerful ray stones, and unlock the Al Cyclone space station. And,
Wow.
And so you're doing stuff. But what you're doing, you're flying around in 3D space.
Yeah.
This looks very similar to an Elite type game with maybe some more NPC interaction. This is a brand new game for the 1200. Doesn't list the system requirements, so I'm guessing just a regular old 1200 will do. But it looks very much like Elite Dangerous in the way that the radar is laid out and everything.
Yeah.
It's like you've got a docking sequence here. Who doesn't love a good docking sequence?
Man,
in a
this
game?
isn't at all what I thought this would be. I used to play a game called Pleiades in the arcade. It was like just like old Space Invaders type game. This is like, I thought this would be at least make a 3D version, but no, this is a lot more intricate, a lot more involved than I would have anticipated.
This game, Aaron, take note, computer
right.
game developers. If you click on the itch page, first of all, put your game on itch. Don't be an idiot. This is where the people are. You're only cheating yourself if you don't put your game on itch. 2, charge a reasonable price.
Yeah.
€4.90.
Bam,
okay?
we're in.
Yeah. I mean, that's just like I click on it and I get it. Even if I never play it. I want to buy it because that's a price that I can get behind.
Amiga 1200 with 4 megs. It says here, Boat.
Right.
That's all you need, brother.
So anyway, check out this guy's name or this guy's itch page, Mike ketx.itch.io. This is an Amos designed game, and you can pick it up for less than $5 and enjoy an elite-like experience.
Listen to this, Boat. I've never seen it. Listen to this. This is on the page. By purchasing Pleiades 3D, you acknowledge and accept the inherent risks that come with playing software on an older system. The enjoyment of that game may vary based on the hardware and software configurations of your retro computer. So,
hey, not the worst preamble to put on there.
Well, I mean, but what do we? Surely no one's going to sue you if the game blew up my machine.
Remember, we're talking about the
Amiga
Amiga community. They'll do anything.
Oh, come on. They're not that bad.
Next up, Aaron, Forest of Illusion.
Oh,
you know, back in the 16-bit days on the Sega Genesis, there were a series of Mickey Mouse games, Disney games by Capcom. They were just incredible. Even the diehard Nintendo fanboy that I was could recognize that Capcom was putting out solid gold on the Sega Genesis. And now, Aaron, some of these games are coming to the Commodore Amiga CD32. It looks like the first of these is the Mickey Mouse and the Forest of Illusion. And they've got a running demo of this right now.
Ooh, how nice.
It appears to be in early days, but it looks great. I mean, it's
look
running
at the backgrounds back there,
it's running a little bit slow, but it is. I mean, this is still early days. If this comes out and it runs anywhere close to the way it does on the Genesis, it's going to show you sort of the wasted potential of the CD32, because if they pull off something like that, it's really going to be special.
Well, theoretically, if the Genesis is running it, the 1200 should better run it at least as well.
I've heard that before.
Oh, listen, don't be a hater, Bo. This looks good. By the way, is the Scorpion engine the biggest king dong of cool stuff to come up in the Amiga in the past couple of years? It's got to be, right?
Yes,
like
it's single-handedly turned the Amiga demo software scene from a joke to something to be contended with.
I don't know if it was a joke, but yes,
we've got all those old Blitz Basic games,
Blitz
and
Basic
all the
is
Red
cool.
Pill.
Don't rag on those. Don't rag on those. Don't be nice.
Those are worse than a transcode.
No, they're not. And the thing is, people that worked in that medium, they were doing yeoman's work. That's hard work, brother. So they're doing the best they could, Bo. Come on, give them a break.
So anyway, I'm going to be watching this carefully. The Force of Illusion, starring Mickey Mouse.
That looks pretty good.
CD32.
Yeah.
Next up, Aaron, this is one, Electro Man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Electro Man bears a somewhat striking resemblance to RoboCop. He's got the RoboCop mask, just the top part though. The bottom part's for suckers. You need to have a fleshy jaw if you're going to be a real
game by
Electro Man.
Chaos. You know it's gold. That's as cool guys it gets right there.
So this is a port of an MS-DOS game called Electro Man.
Okay.
And you know, this looks like
you can see
it looks like a DOS game. This is right up there with your Jill of the Jungle and your Commander Keen.
The way RoboCop moves. Yeah, look, there's a little Ed he just shot. You're right. It's like RoboCop got buff. You know what I mean? Like it's like I'm going sleeveless.
He just busted right out of his armor.
My robot arms can't contain my new muscularity.
Exactly. So anyway, this thing is it's an alpha, and it is so far under development. But you know, Indie Retro News is the place to go if you want to keep track of its development. You can download the demo; it is available. They do have universal joy and keyboard control, and so you can check it out and play it today.
You know I never thought about this exact second, Bode. We often talk about the European platform or the exploration platform or whatever. There is a crossover there that you could draw lines to the old DOS games.
Oh yeah,
sort of like that.
Absolutely.
You know, now they don't play quite the same, but the DOS is probably a little more clunky.
But it's the same sort of low effort schlock.
Well, no. Would you stop? What's got into you today? That's not what I mean.
I don't mean that offensively.
Listen. I'm gonna pop a dialogue tree up here in a second to decide what to do with you. What's next?
Invanoid, an Arkanoid and Space Invaders mix. Okay,
I like
Get the Brent on this one. Okay?
Yeah. He'd hate it the most. He hates Arkanoids so much.
I wonder what his views on Space Invaders are.
They're not high.
So this, I am all about any sort of a remix that can combine two classic games together if they do it right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm seeing as I'm kind of looking at this thing, I'm seeing a lot of Arkanoid, and I guess maybe the Space Invaders are just sort of imagine Arkanoid that you've got a descending row of invaders to contend
Well, no, this
with.
is clever, isn't it? Yeah, you're right. That's exactly what it is. You're using it's like someone killed the little ship in Space Invaders. Like, listen, what do we got left? That we got one of those old Arkanoids out in the barn, and they're like, "Well, go get it. This is all we can do.
Fire up the dough. Let's do it."
Yeah, and they drug this thing out. I mean, there could be something to this. You know, it's an interesting concept.
And this is still an early work in progress, but you
Clean
can
Zone.
download the demo. So
yeah, there you go. Who's this from again, Bo? Did we mention who this is from?
This is from. Let me look and see. I don't know that Neil gives it credit, which is yeah. So I am not sure who this is done by. I'm going to click on the. This is somewhere in Poland, I think. Because it links to a Polish message board. So there you go.
Okay. Congratulations then. Hey, the Polish folks, they're big Amiga supporters, that's for sure. What's next? Oh, we got Doug here.
Yeah, we got the other Doug, the real Doug.
What? No,
He's
wait a
back
minute now.
With the Amiga Art Contest 2023.
Man.
What are this year's prizes?
I haven't seen this one.
Doug beams into this video looking like he's high on multiple mood-enhancing drugs. He is fired up about the Amiga contest this year, the Amiga Art Contest. He is ready to talk about all the wild and wondrous things there are. Yeah. I'm going to cut right to the chase. If you win this bad boy, $50 American.
$50 top prize, Boat?
That's right. Not bad. Not bad.
Is that enough to get you in, Boat?
No.
Is your Michelangelo ripoff going to be making another appearance?
Listen, I don't want the people would complain that it was rigged. That's all I'm going to say. The second place winner, $25 American.
Yeah.
He does put in. He will convert it into the currency of your choice.
Yeah,
it is a service provided by Doug. So I hope that this goes on to now. Oh, he does have that. So there's a first place, a second place, and then a grand prize. Okay?
Yeah.
The grand prize, the best of show, $200 cash. Not an insignificant amount of money.
No, that's good. That's good cash. And I know for certain that amongst our friends in Discord and our usual listeners and supporters, a lot of those guys get involved in this thing. So hopefully we get one of you fellas that we get get in there and fire up something nice. I wish I had artistic skill, Boat. I'm just an oaf. You know, I don't have any. I wish I had some sort of drawing powers.
Listen, you can't have if you had artistic skill, there wouldn't be anything left for other people to excel at.
You know what we should do, Boat? I got it. I just thought it hit me like a bolt of lightning. I'll break out the old Barry horn, right? The baritone.
Yeah.
You go grab the trombone.
Okay.
We'll do a little like dueling banjos on the horns.
Yeah.
And then we'll digitize it and then we'll send it in. That could be it right there.
And we'll digitize the sound and then we'll take video and we'll have Edvin run the video through his Amiga because he has the power to do that.
That would be cool. Good point, Bo. Is that art?
Let's make it happen. Let's make it happen. Finally, speaking of art, Aaron, this is just something that popped up on my YouTube feed. Chuck Rock Amiga intro music performed on Commodore computers. So,
oh yeah,
you've got this guy. This is a big thing that people do now. You know, they take the sounds of the studio, the sounds of the keyboard, and they hook them up to theremins and various other things. They take disk drives, make sounds with them.
Oh yeah,
and this guy, he's got a C1. It looks like a C64, one of the later model C64s, hooked up to a theremin. He's doing some nonsense with a disk drive, making the sounds of the disk drive. So if you want to hear Chuck Rock from the Amiga being performed on various Commodore hardware pieces, then feel free to check that out.
I kind of want to hear this, but I don't have a way to filter it through. Look at, by the way, this guy looks sort of like, remember Joel from Mr. Theater?
MST3K,
He's like if that guy and the 8-bit guy had a child, it'd be this guy.
That's not a child that I want to contemplate.
Well, I'm just saying, you're looking at him right now. That's the guy right there. So good luck, weird instrument man. I mean, That is one wacky instrument right there, I have to say. You know, but hey, it's different. I like it. After the show, I love that Chuck Rock theme. Although
Yeah.
Son of Chuck is your money Chuck, in my opinion. We played that one. That's the one I like, but that's just me. Good stuff
And,
there, Boat.
Yeah, that's going to do it for the Amiga news this week. What's been going on the old YouTube channel?
Well, let's just say that we've got a couple of new things up. Just a quick rundown. You know, myself and the Brent did our first R. Sinclair Boat on Rocco, or the Punch-Out knockoff. And we had a good time. Brent is getting into the swing of things, Boat. You may have to tutor him a little bit in the ways of the ZX.
Hey, I love that show. I thought Rocco was a great episode.
Oh, we had a lot of fun with it. And I've done a couple, you know, I've got my Friday Night Disaster streams back up and running. And last week, if you're interested, I did a disaster stream on the Sega Genesis / Mega Drive, the last years of the Mega Drive. They were not pretty years, Boat.
Really?
I can assure you. No, there were a couple gems in there, but there were a lot of duds. A lot of football, a lot of EA leftovers. Here's the funny thing, though. The Genesis, I just hooked up with. I used my magical baloney to get it hooked up, and it looked not that great. And today I was looking for the thing to do tonight's disaster stream, and I found the HD Genesis adapter that I couldn't find last week. So,
but now you can't find your SCART adapter.
So it looks like an old computer store exploded in my house. That's what it looks like.
It's like the story of the comb in the what was the other thing?
You got the beret. I don't know. Listen, I think people don't care about the site news, Bode. They need to know the Deacon news. What's the Deacon news this week?
Well, the deaconing is firing up this weekend. I wish I could tell you more, but I don't know what's going to go on. We're going to meet up at Clarksburg at Our Lady of Perpetual Help.
Yeah.
And
Your Lady of who?
Our Lady of Perpetual Help.
Help
or
health?
Yeah. Definitely not hell. That would be a church.
No, health, like your health, or help, like H-E-L-P. Okay.
H-E-L-P is on the way. Yeah. So anyway, me and 8 other guys from the diocese are going to go and learn about what it means to be a deacon.
In my mind, like inside the inner sanctum of the church, they've got like a wrestling ring in there, and they put you guys in there, and they're like, "Okay, we've got room for 2 deacons," and then it's just you guys go out,
Yeah.
And and listen, when you're fighting to be a deacon, no holds barred, Bo.
That's right. That's true.
That's what you get. Or Pope hat on a pole. Any of that
Catholic
stuff could be in there.
Is famous for having several well-regarded boxing rings in New England. So if you recall, the first fights in the first Rocky movie were done at a CYO hall. So.
Yeah, listen, that's a not to be too stereotypical, but the old Irish priest routine, the former boxer or the guy that goes to Boys Town.
That's right. Yeah, Father
stick.
Flanagan. Yeah.
So it's real and it happens.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that since Boat's going to be going to be a pencil neck Deke next week, we'll be filming on a Thursday instead of a Friday for those that like to watch live. Boat, what do you think we're going to be playing? You ready to see?
Let's see it, man.
Okay, it looks like we'll be playing
Subuto.
Some kind of soccer game. The classic tabletop football game.
According to Pixels at Dawn, this is a video game adaptation of the classic British sport, tabletop football.
Is that like foosball?
I don't know. Could be, or it could be something else.
One, so we'll definitely be going. We'll be getting into something, but we don't know what. That'll be coming up next week. Boat, I hope you do well in your deacon training, my friend.
Thank you, my friend. I will see you next week, and until then,
adios.
Made possible by contributions from listeners like you. Patreon supporters help choose the games we play, receive exclusive magnets, and get access to the Amigos Retro Gaming Discord server. Visit patreon.com/Amigos Podcast if you'd like to support the show and join our community.